You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
What a season it has been for Wellington Phoenix and their skipper, Alex Rufer.
Rufer rifles it at goal! Alex Rufer, the captain, with a huge goal! He doesn't score many, but how critical could that be right before half-time?
Great to welcome into the News Talk ZB studio, Wellington Phoenix Captain, Alex Rufer. Nice to see you, mate.
Awesome, thanks for having me.
It's nice to have you on your day off as well. I presume you haven't trained today. Have you had a session this morning?
Oh, I've had a session, but it was out on the water.
Oh, God. Were they biting?
They were for a little bit. We took the boat out for an hour or so and caught a little bit of a feed and then came back in, and now I'm here. Good
stuff. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Alex, happy to take your questions on text 9292. Tell me about Wednesday night, first of all. Obviously, just to give those who aren't aware the background to this, the Central Coast Mariners had a catch-up game against Adelaide United. You'd done all you could. You were top of the table by a point. You gathered together, presumably, to watch to see if Adelaide could beat the Mariners. They couldn't. Did you all watch it together?
Yep. So we all got down to a restaurant sort of bar together. We hired out a floor together. We had some food and watched the game, and obviously it wasn't the result that we wanted, but still incredibly proud of the boys.
Did it in any way steal your motivation because you couldn't get your hands on that piece of silverware to get the next available piece, or was that motivation always there?
Oh, the motivation was always there. I think leaving after that game Wednesday night, I think all the boys were extremely, brassed off, and I think it only probably added fuel to the fire. So in terms of that, I think we now just need to make sure that, we're ready come our game this weekend, and I know we will be.
Can I take you back to the start of the season, into pre-season? What were your honest expectations at the start of this season?
At the start of pre-season, honestly, my predictions were I knew we'd be in the top six because I knew we had enough quality in the room. I wasn't concerned, but I wasn't sure how the young players would do. Not because they weren't good enough. I knew they were good enough, but just being able to back it up every week, and they have been unbelievable. I've been so proud of all the young players, obviously the whole team, but the young players have really stood up this year, and I couldn't be happier for them.
Can you tell early when a young player comes into the group, a young player, let's say a teenager, comes into the group, can you tell whether they're going to be able to play A-League?
I think definitely. I think you can as soon as you see them when they come in. I think about Sarpreet Singh. Straight away you could see he's got it. Kakache as well. That was more just from a physical presence that he had and his fitness. But I do think that there are some players that take time. There are some young ones that do take time just to get used to the level, to get used to training every day in a high intensity. So you can't write anyone off. But I do think you can see straight away, especially with the good ones.
Were you aware of the outside noise? Because as has been talked about, you and I have talked about this privately, it's been talked about by your coach and lots of other players. You even mentioned it in the media yourself, that a lot of people wrote you off at the start of the season. How aware were you of that kind of chat?
Oh, to be honest, I obviously did see it, but I tried to stay away from looking at all that stuff because, since I've been here, we've always been one of the teams that has always written off. And, obviously you can't look into it too much because it's all, as long as you know how good you are and how much belief you have as a team, that's all that matters. And especially this year, I've seen a massive belief in the group that has been really amazing to be a part of.
So here we are now, most points ever achieved by a Wellington Phoenix side, most wins, most clean sheets, fewest goals conceded, highest finishing position, all of those sorts of things. When did it become apparent to you during the season that something kind of special was happening here?
I've been asked this question before actually, but just by one of my mates, and to be honest, probably the game against Western Sydney just before Christmas, when we, for 90 minutes it was just back and forth and it was 0-0, and then when we scored in the 91st minute, or it was late on.
It was.
And then to just go and score again and just, really stand on their throat. That really was a big game because, against one of the teams at the time who were performing really well, they were, tipped to be a big team and to win the league. And then for us to do that, that was when I really started to think, yeah, we've got what it takes, or we would be close. And then throughout the season, we lost obviously 4 games, and after every loss, we always won straight away. And that is a sign of a team that is pretty good.
Yeah. Inside a team, every team I think talks about, we've got a great team culture. You know, a lot of teams say it. You've been in a lot of teams, a lot of Phoenix teams, international teams, other teams. Can you define what it is? What a good team culture feels like when you do have it?
I think for us this year, we've not forced anything. I think a big thing for us, we knew we had a lot of young players coming in. So for us as the leadership group and the staff, making the young players feel comfortable to be able to express themselves as soon as they walk in the door. And I think we've done that extremely well. And then obviously having a great balance throughout the team, you know, young to old, you know, all the players could easily hang out with each other. All the players can go and have a coffee with each other. No one, you know, there's no dickheads in the team, which was mentioned the other night at our awards. But, you know, I really do believe that because we didn't force anything and we really let everyone just be themselves and express themselves, you know, on a day-to-day basis, I think that's probably why we've been so successful.
There are some players who are by nature a bit quieter, right? Look at, I'll use an example, Lucas Kelly-Heald. He won an award the other night, came up, and I think he would have preferred to go out and run 10K than give a speech. You know, that's the kind of, that's from the outside looking in. But inwardly, like, do you try and encourage a guy like that out of their shell, or do you just say, okay, well, that's what he's about. He's more of a quiet achiever.
Oh, look, we do. As I said, we've had to obviously learn, especially myself with all the young ones. Everyone's different, as you know. You have to. You know how to, you know, push people's buttons and try to get a little bit more out of them. But we've not forced anything, especially with Lucas. He's obviously had a great season. We do give him a bit of stick at times, and he's actually over the year started to give it back, which has been really good to see. But no, we've just let him do his thing. And as you said, like, he's one of those boys that would prefer to go and run, you know, a marathon than probably get up in front of a mic and speak to, you know, 100 people. But I can understand that. But he's been good.
What are your leadership responsibilities during the week? We know you lead the team on the field by words and actions, but what are your leadership responsibilities with the team during the week?
I think first and foremost is to lead by example in training every day. As soon as I walk in the door, I think that's a really big one, to make sure that not only myself, the leadership group, to make sure that every player sees me working hard, sees me being professional, acting professional, you know, doing recovery, doing everything I can to make sure I'm ready to play 90 minutes on the weekend. And to be honest, this year's probably been one of the most professional groups that I've been involved in since being at the Phoenix. And I do think a lot of it is actually the young players. They have such almost too much drive and too much, they want to do too much almost, and sometimes you have to pull them back. But for me personally, it's all about, you know, what I do each day, and that's making sure I'm prepared for the weekend, and hopefully the other ones follow, and they have.
How different is your preparation now from when you first became a professional?
Honestly, probably the biggest thing for me is probably nutrition. I think when you're young, or when I was younger, I still ate well and still, you know, tried to get my, you know, 4 meals in a day and ate after training and things like that. But probably just the quality of meals now that I eat, and probably the next one for me would be recovery. When you're younger, you know, you don't think you need to, or you know, you think you can get away with missing it here and there. But as you start to get older, you do realise that all those things just, you know, they might only be 1 or 2%, but they do keep you playing at the top level.
Can I ask you about your time at the club? Because you're approaching 150 games for this football club. You won't quite get there this year. Grand final, I think, will be 148th. But 150 games. In your first 4 seasons, you started 1 game. You know, in your first 5 seasons, you started 5 games. I think I've told you these numbers before. You're probably delighted that I'm reminding you about them. How do you reflect on your overall time as a Phoenix player and the transition you've made from that to now being the captain?
Oh, it's been a roller coaster. Look, my first 4 years, I was extremely young. I came as a 16, 17-year-old kid, and, you know, at the time, when I first came into training, I did believe that I should play. That's never been something that I've not thought. But when I first arrived, I remember coming into the dressing room, and my direct competition was Carlos Hernandez and Rolly Bonavazia, Stein Husegims, and they were all amazing players. I learned a lot off all of them. So the first 4 years was tough. I think that was a big thing for me because I'd never not played. And so for me to then be not even involved in most squads was very difficult. But I do think that really helped me mentally to learn and to understand how each day, regardless of if you are playing or on the bench or not, that you have to fight. You have to be on it every single day. And especially back then, that was a massive sort of takeaway I do take from those first sort of 4 or 5 years.
Were you ever close to leaving?
I was close to leaving in 2017. 2017 or 2018, I can't remember exactly. I felt as if my time, not as if my time was done, but I felt like it was getting a bit stale. I was in the national team. I had a few offers at the time, which I thought were quite interesting, and I did go to Switzerland for about 2 months, and there was a big chance for me to stay there. I've got a Swiss passport, but I always had this just burning desire in me to just show everyone that I could play here. And then I stayed, and here we are.
And around about that time, Mark Rudan came to the football club as coach, 2018-19. So yeah, the time frame you mentioned there is bang on. That season, you played 25 of the side's 28 games. I think you only missed out when you were suspended for yellow cards. So did you all of a sudden become a better player, or were you just given an opportunity?
I just think for me, that especially that season, Mark Rudan came in and everyone was on a level playing field. There was no one above the team. He treated everyone the same, and I just believe that he gave me an opportunity. And I knew as soon as I'd get an opportunity, I knew I'd take it. Not to say I didn't have opportunities in the past, but I do feel that, especially with him, I think it was a week leading into the first game of that year, and I wasn't meant to start our last preseason game. I think it was against Melbourne Victory, and someone got injured just before the kickoff. I think it might have been Mitch Nichols, and I knew right then and there, this is my chance, and I need to take it because otherwise this could be, another long year. And yeah, I did. And after that game, he came to me and said, "It's your spot to lose." And from there, I just made sure that every week I just tried to get better and better, and I did feel like I did that year.
Do you think you're playing the best football of your career now?
Yes, I do.
How have you changed? If you look at the Alex Rufer that came into the team at 16, 17 and the player you are now, of course, all players develop over time with experience and that sort of thing, but how different a player are you now?
Yeah, well, like you said, every player has their own journey. Every player develops differently. When I first came to the Phoenix, I was a striker and number 10, and Ernie Merrick always played me in one of the front four. And then obviously after probably about the second year, he basically said to me, "Look, you're not going to start in either of those four positions. We're light and holding midfield." And I grew a lot in my first sort of year or two there. And then he just said to me, "Listen, I do think you can be a top holding midfielder." And that was something that was new to me because I'd never played a defensive position. And just as the years went on, I just tried to develop my game. And initially, I only thought about with the ball, which was probably something that, as a young kid, looking back, was probably a bit naive. And then now my main responsibility is to try and stop their best player, and that's all defensive work. So yeah, for me now, especially this year, I just feel like I've had a few bad injuries. I haven't had a full year and preseason for 2 years now. Obviously, in 2021, I did my knee, or 2022. So I missed half that year, missed half the next year. And so this year I really made a real conscious and strong effort to make sure that day one of preseason, from that point on to the first game of the season, I was going to be the fittest I was ever going to be, and the strongest I've ever been, and I am. So I think that's a massive reason as to why I've been playing so well.
Alex Rufer is our guest in studio. Do you think your surname has ever been a burden?
That's another question that I have been asked a lot during my time here. When I first arrived at the club, I never thought it was a burden, but there was a lot of pressure that I hadn't felt at that level before, because as soon as I signed my first professional contract, it was, Rufer, he must be a baller, he must be an unbelievable player, and obviously you're confident in your abilities and things like that, but then when you don't start to play and things don't go your way, well, then it's like, oh, is he just there? There was a lot of comments like, oh, is he just there because of his name? And when I was a bit younger, it didn't, like before professional, it never used to get to me. I never thought about it once. And then as soon as I signed professional, probably my first year, I did think about it a little bit. But I had good players in that dressing room that really helped me with that. Ben Sigmund, Manny Muscat, Andrew Durante, just to name a few of them, Paul Eiffel. They really helped me, and I ever since then I've never thought about it.
Because your dad is Shane, your uncle is Winton. How much of an influence have they been on your football?
Oh, they've been, as you know, they've been a massive part of my career. My dad's probably since I was 8 or 9. He asked me when I was about 8 or 9, if I wanted to be a professional, and that was when I first said yes. And then from that point onwards, he was just on me like a rash. He was, just pushing me to the limit every time I trained, every time I played. Even when I'd score, 6 goals or 7 goals in a game, I'd, come off the field thinking I was the bee's knees, and he'd go, well, how many did you miss? So I was always trying to get gratification from him, get, positive compliments from him, but they just never came. And I do believe that was a good thing. So he was a massive part for me during my youth. And even now, I speak to him every day. Gives me great advice when things aren't going well, not just for me personally, but as a team, and how to try and turn things around. And then obviously Winton, being my uncle, he gives me advice too, not as much as Dad, but he's more from, he's a bit of a big gun, so he doesn't give me the best advice at times.
I've got a question here actually from Ian. Alex, have you succeeded in copying your Uncle Winton's goal of the century when he had his back to goal, swiveled and volleyed home with his left foot? Do you know the goal I'm talking about? Yeah.
For the Kings?
That's it, for the Kings. You know the goal. Have you given it a crack?
I've not given it a crack, and I've not succeeded in doing that, and I think I could do that 1,000 times, or a lot of players could probably try that 1,000 times and probably wouldn't do what he's done, and that just tells you how good he was.
I think they actually did something with the Kings players on Sky after that. They all gave it a go. I mean, what a player. What a player. Incredible. Hey, just back to this season, straight into the home and away semis, depending on the results of the elimination finals this weekend. You'll either play Melbourne Victory, Sydney FC or Macarthur. I'm not going to ask you who you prefer, but is there any of those teams you think you match up better against?
As you said, I don't prefer any of them. I'm confident, not just in myself, but in the team, that whoever we get, we'll give them a good run for their money. We're prepared. Coming off last weekend, I think we match up well against Macarthur, and I think throughout the course of the year we have done. I still look at Sydney and I think they've caused us a lot of problems, but I don't think we've played our best football against them once in terms of a full 90-minute performance. And I think if we were to do that, I think we could cause them some serious problems. And then again, Victory, we very, very good defensive side, but I think the last game we played them, we beat them 1-0, and I do think we were definitely the better team. But look, I've said all that, but finals football was completely different. The game's won on mistakes, and whichever team makes the least amount of mistakes will win the game. Just
on that then, how do you go into a game without the trepidation of making a big, high-profile mistake? How do you get rid of that trepidation?
Well, with experienced players, they know that what to do, game management, certain times where you can play certain passes or where you can't. But I do think we've prepared well throughout the season. The way we've played, we've always tried to play out from the back. It's quite a high-risk style of football. So in terms of that, if we have made a mistake trying to play our brand of football from the back, it's always been a moment where we could concede here. But we've always managed to then, the next action was always good. So I think it's not even about thinking about, if I make a mistake I think it's, if I make a mistake, what's next? straight away next action, and I think we've done that quite well this year. Like you said, we've got the best defensive record, and at times we've played some pretty brave stuff and around our own goal box, but I think that shows you that we can do it. And now in the bigger stage, I think that's why I'm so excited, because these are the games you want to play in, and I know the boys are buzzing too.
Do you think you can take the consistency of the regular season into the finals?
100%. I don't see why not. We're a confident team. We're positive. These are the games you live for. And I know all the young players who have played this year, even the ones that have come off the bench towards the end of the year, a lot of them even picked up their game. So that's really been impressive, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Already ticket sales for the home leg of that semi are just going gangbusters. I checked yesterday, and there's massive parts of the ground that are already sold out. Yellow fever, you can't get a seat. It's that yellow fever. Yeah, I mean, it's completely sold out. Often you hear sports people say, look, I don't pay attention to the crowd. But can you feed off their energy if it's a really big, loud crowd?
Oh, yeah. Actually, going back to that Western Sydney game, I really felt that they got us over the line. It was a big crowd, and we started to get a bit of momentum towards the end of the game. And I really felt they really pushed us. Melbourne victory when we were 1-0 down, another big crowd. They really pushed us, and we just kept going, and we got the fruits in the end of that game. Obviously, Melbourne victory a couple of weeks ago, MacArthur. I've just listed probably all of our biggest crowds this year, and massive results against big teams. You can definitely feel it. The Yellow Fever are always loud, and when they are loud and proud like they always are, but when they are extra loud, it makes a big difference.
All right. Well, a big crowd coming on that on the occasion of that home semi-final. Just a couple more. Interested to hear your views on the arrival of Auckland FC and how you think that's going to change the landscape of the game here.
I do believe it's a good thing. I think it's a positive thing, not just for the A-League, but for New Zealand football. I think now having another professional team for young players to, strive to be a part of and, really try to get themselves there, I think it's massive for New Zealand football. I think it's great that we're going to have a derby. I haven't given that much thought yet until obviously next pre-season when we start to prepare, but I think it's going to probably cause Phoenix some problems in terms of keeping Kiwi players, which again I don't think is a bad thing. I think that's just the nature of the game. But yeah, I do believe it's going to really help football in New Zealand, especially youth. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, you mentioned about how it might cause problems for the Phoenix, but only in a good way for the players, I'd imagine, because like a player like yourself, for example, one pathway up until now, when there are two clubs jockeying for your services, clearly you've got a bit of leverage. I'm not saying that you would try and screw anybody, but it does give you a couple of options, doesn't it? Oh, exactly.
I think, and also it works out well. It works out for players who might not play at Auckland or might not play at Wellington. It works out that way too, where they might be a player that's been there for a couple of years, like I was at the Phoenix for my first 4 years and didn't play. And then they might get a lifeline at the other club and go and perform. So I think just that as well is a really, really good thing. But yeah, when I say problems for the Phoenix, I don't mean it as in like, they're going to struggle to keep players. I just, as you said, it's just now players have a bit more leverage. And I also think that's good for players too.
Indeed. Do you let yourself visualise lifting the A-League trophy?
Yes. I do visualise it. I don't do it all the time. Before MacArthur, I did have that thought in my head when I knew we'd win that game. I was so confident we'd win that game, and I just had this feeling, we're going to do it. We're going to win the league. And obviously it didn't happen, but, I've always said, why not strive to win, and why not believe you can win? Why not visualize those things? Because, we play in a competition, there's 12 teams. What's the point in competing if you don't believe you can win? And obviously we didn't win the league this year, but we came second. We gave it a good crack, and now we can win some other silverware. So that's what we're going to do.
Well, you've stayed much longer than the 10 minutes I asked you to come in for, Alex. I appreciate you being so generous with your time. All of New Zealand sports fans, football fans in particular, are just so proud of what you've done, and behind you for the next 3 matches that I know there are going to be, home and away semi and then their grand final. Thanks for stopping in, mate.
No, awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Alex Rufer, captain of the Wellington Phoenix, with us on Weekend Sport.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.